Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pearls of Pedagogy. I am B Rose, your host. I really appreciate all the love that I've been receiving so far, and I'm really excited about today's interview with Dr. Norman Golar of Stillman College. So, as we are bringing in some more friends into the live feed, I just want to kind of go over kind of how today's show is going to run. I'm trying, as I'm going through each interview, I tweak my logistics based on your feedback and feedback from friends and family members. So I'm trying to keep everything under 2 hours. That's my first goal. And that's just because when it comes to editing down the road, it makes it a lot easier for me to edit my content if it's less than 2 hours. So that's one of my biggest lessons I've learned so far. Next, I have the 2 hours, and then I am only going to have one guest per show, and that's because originally I thought, oh, I can have about two guests per show, but it ended up working out where I had a guest that could not come on last week. And how my questions were going, I said, oh, if I had somebody else to interview, I would, one, be rushing through my questions, and two, it would have went way too long. Like it would have definitely been well over 2 hours. So just with the feedback I've received and just so far my experience with streaming live, I've decided to keep everything under 2 hours and only interview one guest per show. So that's what we're doing. And so of course, y'all make sure as you're coming in, you are letting us know where you're watching from. And let me know how you have liked the show so far. I've only had like two interviews, well, one interview really, and then I had another show where I just introduced myself. But I am really, really excited about the show. So today's show is going to be kind of broken up into four parts. So we'll do part one, part two, and then we'll have a quick break. And that's just to show a little respect to my guest because I am really excited to have him on today. So I have like a lot of different questions I want to ask. And I was so tempted to ask these questions way back, like when we first met, when I was a student at Stillman College. And even when I first asked him to be on my show, so I was like, okay, I gotta calm down because I really want to keep all the intrigue for my questioning in the show. So if you're tuning in, make sure you're telling us where you are watching from, and make sure you drop a pencil emoji to let me know you're watching live. And if you're just watching the re-air or like you're watching a recorded version of this show on YouTube or Facebook, then just drop a thumbs up emoji and make sure you subscribe and like and share the videos with your friends and family members. As I've stated in other, as I stated in my first live show, my purpose for Pearls of Pedagogy is to really fulfill a need that I felt when I moved to a different state to teach because um, I didn't feel like I had a lot of mentors that I could just go to anytime, and I kind of felt a little alone, and then when I would go online to find content and advice from teachers, especially teachers of color, I did not see any. And it was really hard. Like I was searching for a long time. So now I've decided, hey, why don't I create something that will start almost like a digital archive? That's what I'm calling it of these great educators, not only in K-12, but in higher education as well. So that's what Pearls of Pedagogy is. We are enlightening and encouraging our education enthusiasts, and we want to kind of spread the knowledge in this like what I call like pearls of wisdom from these really great educators and administrators, and really show like kind of like the unsung heroes in education, if that makes sense. So I'm really excited about today's show. I am going to I'm waiting for my guest to arrive. He'll be coming on shortly. But I'm really excited. I see some people are watching. I have a couple of streams going on. I have LinkedIn going on, Facebook, and YouTube is live. So if you are watching, go ahead and drop your where you're watching from. Drop it into the comment section, and I'll highlight your comment. All right. So, um, a couple of things I do want to talk about as well. So I just found out that University of North Texas. I don't know if you all have heard about it, but this is for especially my peeps that are here in Texas with me. But University of North Texas, their College of Education has just been put on like a probation by TEA, the Texas Education Association. So they did not give any reasoning, but this is their second year in a row to be like put on this probation. So they are at risk for their entire program being suspended. I'll be, leaving some more information on my website, pearlsofpedagogy.com. But the fact that you have a very well-known education college going kind of downhill, in my opinion, is really scary, because a lot of students that come through that program go on to teach at some of the largest districts in North Texas, like Frisco and Denton and Dallas ISD. So that's really scary. When I saw that this past, I think it was a Thursday, that the Denton Chronicle listed that. So I'll be talking about that on my website a little bit, because that was really scary when I saw that news. Alrighty there. Oh, okay, I see we have Ellis Hill. Of course, he is always like my first person watching. I appreciate him. That's my husband. And thanks for dropping your pencil. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. So today's episode, we're gonna sit down with Dr. Norman Golar, and he has an impressive 14-year tenure at Stillman College. In his early days, he was chair of Department of English, and then he's gone on to now be the interim vice president for institutional effectiveness and research. So he's really navigated a remarkable career in academia. So excited for him to be here. Make sure you're sharing and sharing this post so people are like, hey, yeah, let me go ahead and tune into Pearls of Pedagogy. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I have some people on YouTube commenting, hi there, commenting. But Dr. Golar is, from my own experience at Stillman College, was like always a favorite of students on campus. Everybody was like, the Dean Golar, he is like amazing. And then I never got the privilege to have him as an actual professor. However, anytime I ever needed something and I had to go to him for it, it was like always very pleasant. It was very professional. I was like, man, Dr. Golar, he is the guy. Like, if you need something at Stillman, he is there. If he doesn't know the answer, he's not going to act like he knows. He's going to try to lead you in the right direction. And then when I became the Student Government Association president, that's when I, started to have like speeches where I would have to get up in front of people. And I remember asking him to proofread something for me. And the way he proofread went above and beyond my expectations. And how I had not had anyone proofread something of mine with that much care and detail in such a long time, and I really appreciated that. So I said, okay, if I ever need anything, he's got my back, right? So I'm really excited about today's episode. Remember, you can always stream on YouTube. YouTube actually houses all of the shows um, in perpetuity. So that's where they'll go. If you ever miss part of a stream, you can always go to YouTube and view. Um, Go on YouTube and view those shows later on if you'd like, and you can comment. I'll be able to see your comments later on as well. Okay, I kind of want to go back to when I was talking about UNT's College of Education getting like placed on a probation again. It's just really crazy how that's happening. But they didn't the as far as UNT, their dean didn't make any comment about why they were put on probation by the Texas Education Association. But different reasons could be where, like, if there are people that haven't that are not graduating or passing praxis. And if you don't know, as far as education is concerned, praxis is basically your certification test that you have to take. I'm just going to oversimplify it, but it's a test you have to take. And in a lot of colleges, you cannot graduate with your certification in teaching without passing your content area exams. And there's other exams you may or may not have to take in order to satisfy the graduation requirements. And not only just the graduation requirements, but the certification requirements, because there are some schools I know that will allow you to graduate without being certified, and some will be like, oh, you can't graduate unless you're certified beforehand. So it's really scary because a lot of teachers that I have worked with graduated from UNT's education program. So the fact that this is the second year in a row where they have gotten dinged on something, we don't know what it is. We don't know if it's graduation percentages. We don't know if it's test passing percentages. We don't know what it is. So we're just going to be hopeful. I'm hopeful that they'll rectify whatever the issue is. And then so it won't affect, it's really going to affect students, here in the North Texas area and beyond. So it's kind of scary that's happened. All right. So we have a couple other things I want to talk about, but you know what? Let's get the intro going and make sure you are sharing and telling people, hey, to tune in. But we're going to get started in just a few. So we're going to take a quick break. And when I come back, we'll have Dr. Golar on. Hello, and we are back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. I had to take a quick break. I'm having some technical issues. It's like inexcusable at this point because I am plugged in. I think it's something going on with internet, but I am plugged in with a Cat 8 Ethernet cord, and as far as what we're paying to AT&T for this internet, it should not have any issues. So if my video is laggy, I apologize in advance for that. The audio should always be good though. So I am going to just be prayerful that it does not get any worse than it is already. It should not be doing this. All right. So, welcome back, everyone. Remember to have your friends, family, teacher friends to log in and make sure you share our link. We have a really special guest today, Dr. Norman Golar of Stillman College. Like I said earlier, um, I'm really excited about this interview today. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Dr. Golar. So excited. And you all, I'm just like fanning out today. So, let me go ahead and bring him on. Hi, Dr. Golar. How are you?
Hello. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm, doing my own little stressing back here, trying to get my all my stuff mapped out. I'm like, why is my video lagging? I just don't tolerate this type of technical issue, but it's the way of the world now. So, oh well. But thank you for taking time to be on my show. I'm really excited to be able to ask a lot of these questions that I have ready and hear your story and tips for other educators. So,
Sounds good.
yes. So, okay, first, let's just talk about your background
Mm.
and in creative writing. So, can you tell us about your early interest in creative writing and what sparked your interest in pursuing that major when you went to Knox College?
So I think for the most part, most of our inspiration comes from those detrimental moments in our lives. So at a moment when I discovered writing creatively, it was at a time when things were a little bit tipsy turvy in the home.
Mm,
And then it was a sense of me trying to find an outlet, one that
mm,
was a little bit creative, but yet not damaging to either me or anyone else.
mm,
And so when I was in high school, I had a high school English teacher who told me and said, Norman, you have great writing potential. I see you going on to college. And she said, but I want you to keep in mind the A's that you pull in high school may not be A's that you receive in college.
mm,
And just the very fact that she shared that with me allowed me to use what I was doing as therapy. Once I entered the undergraduate realm, it was a sense of like an eye-opening experience because I had a chance to try out what I had newly found,
mm,
as well as try to find other skills and other talents and other whatever to
mm,
add to what it is I was bringing to the table. So I had when I first got to college, you'd be surprised, but when I first got to college, I thought I was going to major in biology. And
really?
oh yeah, because think about it. You're thinking about where you come from. You're thinking about a lucrative opportunity. What should I do?
Mm,
Oh, I'll major in biology because I was going to be a dentist and all this other crazy stuff I had going
wow.
on. Yeah, I had this whole thing mapped out. But once I got into that general bio one, and when I was falling asleep on the front row, I knew that was a problem.
Yeah.
But I had at Knox, I had a great group of faculty members who pretty much ushered me in into creative writing and said, "Hey, you want to give us a try?" And at the end of the day, I had a chance to speak with the chair of the creative writing program. He has passed away now, Mr. Robert Metz. And he told me, he said, Norman, I've been hearing about you. I've been hearing about this fire inside of you. And I think we can hone that fire. And I'm looking like, really, who has been talking about me? Uh, and so this is around like maybe my third term in sophomore year. So, I'm really
Mhm,
confused and perplexed, but they let me know that God sent his angels to provide some type of word to the program director, because then once I, accepted creative writing, I think from my own perspective, all doors open for me, It was like a sense of closure, a sense of achievement, and then just excited to see what the next stage of my life was going to entail. So all of those things. So my background creative writing happened while I was at home going through some things as a teenager, and then it just took off once I got to undergraduate at Knox College. So um, I think that's pretty much the gist of where that came from.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Wow.
I don't take any of it for granted. I appreciate all of it, regardless of the journey. I appreciate all of it. So
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, do you still have some of your like high school writings that you kind of keep and look back at from time to time?
I think I, I think I metaphorically burned those things from my mind. I don't know if I had because I kept a journal, and
Mm-hmm.
when you move from one place to the next, that journal somewhere, I don't know, maybe someone's enjoying that journal. I
Right.
have no idea. But yeah, it
Wow.
was in the journal, so I didn't keep any of that. And I think because it was therapy, I
Mhm.
didn't keep it. You know what I mean? So it was a
Mm,
sense of once I put it on the page, I was done. I
you
was
let it go.
relieved. Yes, yes,
Mm.
absolutely. So no, I didn't keep any of that. No, not at all.
That is awesome. Actually still have one of my diaries, but it's a diary that I had from fifth grade through like seventh
Oh,
grade.
really?
Yes, and so you can only imagine the the so and I went back and I would read it. And me growing up, I'm the oldest girl,
Mm.
and I always kind of had this thing where I'm like, man, I wish I had an older sister I could look up to, and that was one of my main reasons I joined a sorority, because I'm like, oh, I want some big sisters to kind of
Sister good.
talk
Yeah.
to. Um, and I some of that stuff I wrote, like I was basically talking to my diary like they were a big sister. And I look back at my writings, I'm like, whoa, I would refer to my family members as my roommates. That's how that teen angst was real. I called them my co-tenants. I
That's
read one entry. I
hilarious.
was like, what? I said,
That is
man,
hilarious.
was I that mad at them?
But at the
But
same time, you
interesting.
found your voice. So hey, it works out.
Right, right. Exactly, exactly. So I want to ask you about kind of how you navigated undergrad writing. So,
Mm.
like your teacher in high school told you, the A's that you were pulling in high school, you wouldn't pull them the same way in college. And I remember getting that rude awakening with Dr. Doris Davenport, still in college. And I
Yes.
got my first D. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So could you
Yeah.
kind of talk about like kind of your first, even though you were given that pearl of wisdom, like when it first really hit you, like, whoa, like I need to come with it. I need
Well,
to change some things.
you know the theory behind it and the reality, they were warring, right? Because the theory behind it, I got to college and I was like, hey, I don't know what my English teacher was talking about. This is a breeze. And lo and
Mm-hmm.
behold, I took a first year preceptorial course, which is synonymous to any orientation course. And
Mm-hmm.
in this course, I found out that the professor was a mathematician. So
Oh.
I said, oh, easy peasy.
Mm-hmm.
Anything all right. He's going to love it. He's going to eat it
Yeah.
up. Silly me, right? I get my first paper back and it's bleeding with red ink. That's sign
Mm.
number one. Sign number two, the comments were very extensive. And then sign number three, that big red D on my paper.
Oh.
And that was freshman year, of course. So at that moment, especially that time, we were in a trimester. So we have fall term, winter term, spring term.
Okay.
And these were 10 weeks. So, 10 weeks is like, it's like they're feeding you with a shovel. It's all of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
dumping in 10 weeks. And I remember every weekend I would call my father, I would call home, and I would, either be crying or frustrated, saying, I don't get it. I don't think I'm going to make it here. A lot of this stuff is challenging, so forth and so on. And it was because of that D, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because everything else I was kind of navigating, but when that one hit, because it was writing, it was English, and because
Mm.
I heard what my high school teacher told me, I was like, yes, I'm good.
Right.
But no, the good was not good. And when I
Mm.
received that D, just like you, I felt like the end of the world was coming. I felt like, oh, I can kiss all these scholarships goodbye.
Yeah.
But my father, he had a way of just talking with you. He had a way.
Mhm.
He was not college educated, but he had a way for me to still honor him as my father. And he said, you know what? In high school, you graduated, you mastered that. You're at a new level. You got to find what it is you need to master. And I
Mhm.
never thought about that till I had that conversation with him. So when I went into that first year preceptorial class, and by the time I ended that class, I had taken the initiative to try to get help, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that goes on. There are a lot of things that goes on in the psyche of us young African American men, as well as African Americans in general. And when
Mhm.
I decided that I was going to step outside of my pride and get help, because help did not mean that I was weak. Help meant I need to understand this new system, this new writing,
Mhm.
this new whatever. So although I passed first year preceptorial on average,
Mhm.
everything after that, once I took my first writing class, once I decided to declare creative writing, everything after that required me to stand on the shoulders of others, which meant I took my pride aside and I sought help. So
Mhm.
tutoring became it became what I breathed, right? To the point where if I had a small draft or something, I made sure I went over to the writing coordinator's office, set up a time where we could meet, and I would meet with him in advance. So if it was due on this date, we started our meetings 2 weeks and a half before the deadline because he wanted to see me go through the process of revising and revising and revising until I felt
Mhm.
comfortable. So to navigate the whole idea about writing and what that meant in undergraduate, it
Mhm.
was a challenge at first. But I will say that by the time my junior year came along and senior year came along, I found myself feeling comfortable with the process because that was one thing that was not taught to me in high school, a process. Everything
Mhm.
was built on product. Hey, here's the assignment, go write it, boom, get a grade. In college,
Mhm.
I embraced the process, and it was that process that led me to, all right, create an outline, all right, create a draft, all right, go back and revise the draft, all right, revise it again, right? And that was because I had the opportunity to meet with the writing coordinator on a regular basis.
Mhm.
Gave him my syllabi. We outlined when we would meet. So it was like clockwork. And then by the time I got to graduate school, it was like, oh, this is what I would do. Even though I wasn't relying on a writing coordinator, I then took all of those things that he was instilling in me and applied those things when it was just me, myself, and I.
Mhm.
but yeah,
Wow.
but yes. And then the other thing is the culture shock. Here I was coming from Chicago, actual Chicago, not Chicagoland, not suburbs. I was coming from Chicago, and that meant there were some things that I knew I did not have under my repertoire that others did. But I didn't allow that to keep me stagnant. I allowed that to fuel me to figure out how is it that he or she can do what he or she is doing. I need to know more. So I started
Mhm.
watching people how they studied. I started watching people how they walked, how they talked, how they read, how they wrote, all of these things. And then it became very evident to me, oh, it's not that they are that much more smarter than I am. It's because they have a routine that they followed. And I found my routine. So, yes.
Yes, and that is so true because I got some advice several years ago.
Mm,
Might have been a decade ago, but it was they basically said never like always strive or never strive to be the smartest person in the room.
mm,
And when I heard, then they said because you'll always learn something. And it also takes the pressure off of you because I don't feel comfortable when like everything is on me to learn. I like to kind of bring people around me that know more than I do, and I can learn something from them. Even if I am like I tend to be like an organizer of people,
yes.
but um I know that okay, I'm not especially good at details. I'm people tell me I am. I really don't feel like I am. I don't like to fool details. I'm a high level person. But when I see somebody that's really good at details, I have to have them in my corner. Like I have to
Mhm,
have them on my team because I
mhm,
know that someplace that's a place where I am weaker in. And not only weaker, is I just don't care to be bothered with a lot of small details.
mhm,
Um, so I tell people that all the time, like, don't try to be the smartest person in the room. And then I had another person kind of tell me a different version of that same thing. It was don't always try to be the brokest person in the room.
The brokest person in the
Yeah,
room.
the person with the least amount of money. They said because you can always like learn how other people are handling their money and stuff. So that was an interesting take on that on that little quotable.
Oh my
But
goodness.
right, that's kind of interesting. But okay, so now I want to talk about your academic journey. So
Mm.
as far as you getting your master's, what kind of convinced you, like what was your rationale but behind getting your master's? Like once you finished college, what were some of those conversations like? Okay, because you talked earlier about how you originally intended on majoring in biology, because there, there are more lucrative backgrounds
Mhm, mhm.
in the sciences. So what kind of caused you to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get my master's in this field?
Domino effect of God's divine timing. That's my phrase right now. Domino effect of God's divine timing. What I mean by that, I went to college uh, having scholarships, academic scholarships, nothing athletic, all academic scholarships. And once I
Mhm.
got to college, I realized that if I lose my scholarships, I'm going back home to work a 9 to 5.
Mhm.
Now, there's no problem in working a 9 to 5, but it becomes one of those things that causes us to say, well, if I have this opportunity right here, why would I want to throw this away to work a 9 to 5?
Mhm. Mhm.
So when I say about divine timing, my advisor, who was the dean of students, Javier Romano, that was my guy because that was his first year working at Knox, and it was my first year as a student.
Oh
And one
wow.
of the things that he brought me into his office and he said, Norman, let's take a look at your transcript from your first term, because on my first term, after my first term, I was on academic warning.
Oh wow.
And so he said, look, we got to figure out what's the thing that's going to work for you. And he said, all right, Norman, let's look at your transcript. All right, we know we have these other general elective courses. I mean, general education courses we have to complete. But let's think about some of these electives that you can bring in that'll help bring up your GPA. And
Mhm.
and one of the things he said was, because the journey was, okay, biology didn't work, so let's try another one. So we tried psychology. That ended out with a C. That was fine. We tried political science. Ended out with a D. That did not work, right? So it was a
Mhm.
sense of him saying, let's try to find this thing. And he said, guess what? So by the time we found a fitting of a good ground in terms of dealing with those general education courses. But then as I started looking into my sophomore year and started thinking about a major, he told me to look at my transcript and he said, what is the thing that's most consistent in terms of your success here at Knox? And
Mhm.
I didn't want to admit it, but it was the English, because
Mhm.
at that moment my English proved to be strong. And so
Mhm.
he said, sounds like to me, Golar, you need to major in something with English. And and the reason I did not refute that, the reason I didn't oppose it, is because he allowed me to see the data that pointed me in the direction I needed to go. So creative writing became that avenue, that channel for me to be successful, and it proved to be successful. So overall, how I came into thinking about graduate school, divine timing. By the time I'm a junior, the trio program, because we always talk about the trio
Yes.
programs, right? The
That's the
trio
lifesaver for
program,
me too.
yeah, hey, that was my third home. Okay. So I was in there like clockwork. I knew all of the coordinators. I knew hey, what's going on?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we had a counselor who helped us with time management. And the counselor said, hey, look, looking at your progress, you're doing great. You ever thought about graduate school? And I said, no. And she
Mhm.
said, why not? I said, no one told me about graduate school. She said, interesting. She said, go and talk to your director of creative writing, ask him more about graduate schools, and then you come back and see me. So I appreciated her for that, because she didn't take on the load by herself. She sent me to the experts. And when I had a
Mhm.
conversation about graduate school, they were like, oh, you want to go to graduate school? Oh, awesome. Let's make this happen. And they were so happy. And I was just like, what
Oh
in the world
wow.
is happening right here? Because no one had that conversation with me, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't know if there's that cultural difference between going to a PWI and me being an African American male. Maybe that was the clash and no one really talking with me. But Trio, like I said, was my third home. So when I had that
Mhm.
opportunity to talk with the director and talk with the creative writing faculty member, they were just like on board. And so they were telling me, okay, let's build up your portfolio. Let's make this thing
Mhm.
exciting. So graduate programs would love to accept you. And lo and behold, I find myself applying. Lo and behold, divine timing, right? God has a funny way of dealing with us.
Mhm. Yes.
I applied to, I believe, 8 graduate programs.
Mhm.
No, maybe, nope, it was 6. I applied to 6 graduate programs.
Mhm.
I received first rejection letter, second rejection letter, third rejection letter,
Mm.
fourth, and fifth. Now remember, I said I applied 6.
Mm.
Every letter I received before the 6th one were rejection letters. So I'm really freaking out because I'm like, what
Yeah.
am I going to do? I don't put
Wow.
all my chips into this thing called graduate school, and no one is buying into this. No one is going to invest in me.
Man.
And so at the end of the day, the Lord left University of Alabama doors open for me. What I mean by that is I did not get a rejection letter, nor did I get an acceptance letter. I got a phone call. You hear me? A phone
Wow.
call. I got a phone call from the director at the time, who was Robin Bain. She has retired now. And
Mm.
the phone call was, "Hello, Norman. I am Robin Bain at blah, 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 such and such, such and such." And she says, "Look, um, I want you to visit the campus."
Mhm.
And I'm confused because I'm thinking this is a conversation about my application. And she says, "No, I want you to visit the campus. I want you to get to know the graduate students. I want you to do, 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 do." And I told her flat out, I said, "Look, Ms. Bain, I appreciate you, but I don't have the funds to travel down to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't have the funds to get on the plane." She said, "You know what? We will pay for your flight."
Mm.
Now, mind you, I didn't receive acceptance letter. I didn't receive a rejection letter. I got a phone call.
Wow.
She said, we're going to pay for your flight." And lo and behold, pay for my flight, so forth and so on. Fast forward, I'm down there. Next thing I know, I'm signing a lease on an apartment, and I have yet to receive an acceptance letter. You hear me?
Wow.
But on the process of getting ready for that day when I departed from Tuscaloosa, going to the Birmingham airport, it was Robin Bain who drove me to the airport. And during that less than an hour drive, she began to talk with me, and she
Mhm.
began to tell me in so many words that I was accepted, right? That
Wow.
I was accepted. And the reason why she had to hold off is because they wanted to make sure they could secure a graduate teaching line for me, because they didn't want to offer the opportunity to me if there was no way for me to have my tuition paid for.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am. So you
They didn't
guys,
want to call you unless you could come for free.
exactly.
Wow.
You hear me? You hear me? So at the end of the day, why did I choose it? God chose it for me. You hear
Mm.
me? So then, of course, when I get to graduate school, it's a no-brainer. I'm in the MFA creative writing program in
Mhm.
2002.
Mhm.
I am there new just like everyone else who's there, and I'm having a good old time. And I simplified it. I made it very relevant to the point where I said, I'm in graduate school. I don't have to worry about this subject, that subject, this. I can just focus on this.
One thing.
Oh, this is love. This is awesome. This is like none other. So yes, I chose it. God chose it for me. I walked in it. So that's my story. I'm gonna stick to it.
Wow,
Yes,
that is
ma'am.
amazing.
Yes,
Yeah, that
ma'am.
it was for you. That's how you know when
Yes, ma'am.
what was the oh, I can't what's the coach's name? The women's basketball coach. I forget, but she said it was un unrecognizable favor, or she talked about like how they won the championship
Talk
this
about
year.
Don Staley.
Yes, Dawn
Yes,
Staley.
yes, she's a
When
beast.
I was like,
She's a beast.
"Whoa," when people asked her how, and she was just almost speechless when then she said it was, I think it's called uncommon. I think she said uncommon favor. I
Mhm.
was like, she said
Yes,
it's uncommon favor.
common.
She said God, or she said this is not common favor.
Yes.
I just thought like, wow, that story is amazing. So, okay, so now you have moved from Chicago. Had you ever been to Alabama before this?
Couple of times, my stepmom has she has roots down here. I remember a couple
Uh-huh.
of times we came down to Eufaula, Alabama, and Phoenix City,
Oh, you
Alabama, for a family
country
reunion.
country
Yeah,
too.
country. Yeah, it's where mosquitoes about the size of my head. When the lights go out, it's like complete dark. You turn on that porch light, and all of them on the screen door, and you ready to run. Cats looking like big old elephants because they eat any and everything. I've been down that road. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's talk about, I guess, your how you navigated through graduate school.
Mm,
And as far as the creative writing, and um I guess let's talk about like how you transition from there to your PhD. Kind
okay.
of
All right.
how that worked for you.
The navigation part of graduate school, thankfully, it was pleasant because of the graduate teaching faculty, the graduate faculty members who were there at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
Just little name dropping here: Joel Brower, Michael Martone, Wendy Rollins,
Mhm.
um, uh, uh, the late Dr. Robert Young. All of these individuals were stellar graduate faculty because they understood the process.
Mm.
Remember, I told you about process?
Yeah.
They value process more because if you put in work with the process, you're going to get a product every time. And it's
Mm.
going to be a product that you're proud of. It's going to be a product that you can wear on your shoulders, right? So it's the point where you just like, hey, this works for me. And to know that I was accepted helped a
Mm.
great deal because one of the things that I found out, a number of the graduate faculty members, they were not from Alabama. They were from other areas. Some were from the Midwest, like me. Some
Mm.
were from the West Coast in California. So diversity of mind, diversity of thought,
Mhm.
diversity of teaching, it was all placed into that creative writing program. And knowing that that creative writing program at the time I applied was ranked within the top 30. If it, I think it was maybe ranked 20 or something like that in the
Okay.
nation. So that was, that was awesome. So when I had the opportunity to take uh, poetry workshop courses,
Mhm.
fiction workshop courses, special topics courses, these were courses that opened my mind to literature that I had not read before, opened my
Mhm.
mind to the kind of thinking and the writing patterns and the cadence and everything dealing with poetry and line and verse and so forth and so on that I had never, encountered.
Mhm.
And just the very fact that it was a reciprocal relationship. I gave in something, they gave in something. I took away something from it, they took away something from me. So then it was always like this partnership, this collaboration. And the other thing that helped was the graduate students in the program, those in my cohort, they were all like a family, right? So
Mhm.
whenever they had an idea to do something, we did it together. For instance, we knew one of the graduate faculties had a beach house down in Florida in the Panhandle. We were like, hey, oh, in Destin. And we were like, hey, we had heard you got a beach house. You mind if we rent it out? So it was like 12 of us.
Mhm.
And you think, yeah, not a lot of people do things like that, but
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was a sense of they was like, hey, Norm, we got to go down there, man. Come on with us, And I'm like, yeah, let's do it, So I'm going
Mhm.
down there with them, and I'm in a beach house. Like, what? This is
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
nice. And then the cool thing was they were like, hey, all right, we got to divvy up who does meals. I say,
Mhm.
oh, this is really love. So you mean to tell me we are actually really in this pot, this pool together? We carpooling,
Mhm.
we eating, and I don't know what they call for eating as a community. Maybe it's food pooling. I don't know. I'm making up something.
Mm.
Anyway, so I took on breakfast because you know why? Because my mother threw down in the kitchen for breakfast, and I wanted to
Yeah.
introduce my peers to the breakfast that my mama, Geraldine Caesar, provided for me. You hear what
All
I'm
right,
saying? So
Geraldine.
yes, I was up in there like, okay, y'all want some breakfast? I got you, right? Had the grits, had the eggs, had the link sausages, had some biscuits, had all of that. They were like, no, this is good. But
Ooh.
anyway, I digress. But I had a group
Mhm.
and the group were very inclusive, right? The group was very inclusive. So I had that going on. And then, of course, everything going on in the classes helped a great deal. So because I am the type of person who puts 100% if I can into whatever it is been tasked with, well, I was
Mhm.
tasked with getting an MFA, right? I was tasked with getting my master's. So that meant I need to do the work and put in the work and understand what it is I'm working on. So when I put that
Mhm.
time in, the product came. So that kind of helped hand in hand. And then the
Okay.
other part was, and the last one was, me having to be introduced to teaching English composition while I was completing my MFA because that was
Mhm.
part of my tuition free, right? A graduate teaching assistant. That means I have to teach some entry level courses while completing my graduate courses. And that
Mhm.
helps to have my tuition being free. So that's what I did and received a monthly stipend. So I lived off of that stipend. I didn't live outside of my means. I lived off of that stipend. So if my stipend was only $1,100 a month, that meant I need to find an apartment that's going to be like $300. And I did. Made sure that if I go to the grocery store, it's going to be once a month, which I did, right?
Mhm.
So all of these things are just kind of, but it all worked out. So at the end of the day, navigating the creative writing program, uh, it was a blessing. And now
Mhm.
that I think about it, because now, there are a lot of things that I give honor to God for. The
Mhm.
revelation that I have is God was in the plan in the beginning, right? He opened the door specifically for University of Alabama, allowed me to come down here. So of course, if God is in the plan, things are going to work out. So that's the revelation that's coming to me.
Mm,
God made that thing work out for me, MFA program. So yes, it was not that difficult. But then what happened when I made the shift from MFA to PhD, because that's a different beast, right?
yeah.
The mental capacity that I had to maintain or transform, right? Because creative writing, I can use very colorful words.
Mm-hmm.
I can fluff the page if I want to and make
Mm,
you feel all warm and good about yourself, make you feel angry and agitated and everything. But
mm-hmm.
with PhD, I had to focus on thesis statements, topic sentences, supporting sentences, making sure all of this worked, synthesizing my argument with the argument of other scholars, right? So I had to do all of these things in an academic writing setting. So then, of course, that was a struggle, but to turn off the creative writing lens in order to bring forward the academic writing lens.
Wow.
But yeah, that does that answer your question? I know that's
Yes, I was wanting to know like just how you the differences basically, but you
okay.
said
Okay.
it. You know, you had to kind of cut off the creative writing portion
Mhm.
and turn on that academic writing, which is totally different. Like even with my students, when we usually do our informational writing the second semester, we usually do it maybe 4 or 5 units in. So we
Mhm.
start off with narratives. We start off with like narratives, and then we go into nonfiction, um, like nonfiction, no fiction, fictional narratives.
Mhm.
And but when they get to where we are having to do research and you need to, I don't want to hear your opinion. I need you to teach me something in your writing. And that's the hardest thing to get them to not give their opinion on it.
Mhm.
I don't want to hear you unless we're not doing persuasive. We're doing informational writing. And that means that they're going to have to do a lot of reading before they write
Mhm.
something.
Yes,
And
yes,
ooh, trying to
yes.
get them to read something before they're like, no, I can't. I
Yeah.
just copy paste what somebody else. No, and so that's a very so that's real. You know, that's
Mhm.
a struggle. If people struggle with it, and at the graduate level, yeah, kids definitely struggle with it. You know, my
Absolutely.
schoolers do. So, thanks for that.
Mhm.
Thanks so
Mhm.
much for that. So, let's talk about your transition and how you entered Stillman College once you completed your PhD. Oh, and let me back up a little bit. How
Mhm.
did you choose your PhD program? I know there are some people out there. I was talking to a family member of mine who recently completed their master's, and
Mhm.
someone already talked to her about, hey, you should consider getting your PhD. And I'm like, well, how does one really how do you even choose what you do
I
as
got
far
you.
as your PhD is concerned?
So I can answer that two ways. I can answer it in a way that's different from my journey, and then I can answer it from the way of what my journey was. The first answer is usually when you're going through a master's program, you find a thing that that attracts you, that engages you, that ignites you, right? So then it's a sense of like, for instance, if you have been studying, I don't know, rhetorical writing, and for whatever reason you found yourself coming across a lot of legal documents, you're like, oh, you know what? I would like to look more into the rhetoric that's used in these legal contracts, right? So here
Mhm,
I'm going with this. So here you are in English, and you're going through this process of looking at legal contracts and everything. So then that spurs this idea about, let me go get my JD, right?
mhm,
Okay,
mhm,
you see where I'm going? So you got that option. The other option you have is like literally you're looking at some of those things that you found most attractive, most appealing, those things that really sparked your interest. And you're like, hey, how can I capitalize on this a little bit more? Or hey, how can I spend more time doing this? So then you start scanning out there the different writing or not programs, but graduate programs
mhm,
that would, pretty much speak to that thing that you found interest in. So that I would say that's how you would come to find what the PhD is for you. You take the time to look at what you've been doing, and you take the time to realize what it is you're interested in, and then you decide to take the next step or the next leap or whatever that is for you. And you take the time to do that, right? Because that's one option. The other option is mine is different. I was going through the MFA program. I had the chance to take some classes that were requirements for another master's program in the English department. And
mhm,
taking that class introduced me to creative writing graduate faculty. So these are faculty members who are in English composition, faculty members who are in Shakespeare. So we have
mhm,
all of these different ones going on. So one professor specifically said, "Hey, Norman, I know that you're in creative writing and everything, and the job market is great for you, which means that you technically being an African American male, you probably will find yourself getting a professoriate somewhere in another region, another state, so forth and so on. But had you thought about composition and rhetoric?" And I said, I had not.
Right.
And she said, "Well, think about it, Norman. Look, by the time you finish with your PhD, this makes you even more attractive to institutions who are looking to hire young faculty members, right? You're African American, you have a PhD, and it's in English, so rare. You get the opportunity, it'll come to the point where you get to choose where you want to go." And I was
Mhm.
like, that sounds very nice. But what I'm getting at, the fact that someone from the graduate faculty recognized me and asked
Mm.
me to apply to their program,
Mm.
regardless of whatever her motives was, it was a scratch my back, I scratch your back situation at the end of the day, right?
Mm. Gotcha.
Because she had an idea in her mind. Maybe she wanted to think about the diversity that she needs to increase in her program. Maybe she wanted to think about increasing, I don't know, whatever it is. But I knew what she provided to me was going to be something that helps me. And whatever I provide to whatever the program is going to do, I was going to be providing it in my own unique way. So that is how I got into the PhD. That is how it became the composition, rhetoric, and English studies program that I entered. That is how, because a graduate faculty member came and asked me, had I considered applying for my PhD. And
Mhm.
with the Master of Fine Arts at UA, you have an option to complete it in 3 years or 4 years. And I took my time. I did the fourth year.
Okay.
And I'm grateful that I did the fourth year because it was that year when I met my wife, Regina,
Awesome.
because she was a first year master's student in English at UA in the same department, and had the chance to meet her through a mutual supervisor who was over the first year writing program, which meant she was the one, the supervisor was the one who trained us to teach English composition at the undergraduate level. So, yeah.
Mm. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about because I want to really get to Stillman quickly, but I want to talk. I want to talk about your GA because I guess it would be considered you would be considered a GA when you were teaching the undergraduate courses when you were
GTA, GTA.
GTA.
Mhm.
So could you kind of talk about some things that you learned while you were doing that?
Oh, goodness gracious. What I learned that I had a passion to teach. I learned that I
Oh.
needed to be careful because I was still close in age to the young ladies that I was teaching. I learned that I had to separate myself. I learned that I needed to be a professional at all times because now I was an ambassador of the college, right? So, but anyway, I learned that
Wow.
passion for teaching. How did I learn it? Because the moment I got my butterflies about myself and they fled and left, I was smooth sailing. One time I remember talking to one of the older, I wouldn't say older, I'll say senior GTAs. And I told him, I said, "Ron, look, man, I need a little help on this one." He said, "What's going on, Ron?" I said, "Look, I'm about to teach this class for the first time. I've never taught this class. I never taught this group of students. I don't know. Do you have any advice for me?" And Ron said, "Here's my advice to you." He said, "They are sponges." I said, "Okay." He said, "You know what you know, teach what you know. They are sponges. They will take it in, they will soak it up, and they're going to ask you questions based on what you tell them and based on what they have soaked up." He said, "They are just as nervous as you, but guess what? You can't have two nervous individuals or two nervous groups in the room. Someone has to be not nervous."
Mm. Right.
And he said, "I'd rather that person be you." So at the end of the day, just think about it as you having an opportunity to mentor a group of individuals on how to write. When he said that, that helped a whole lot. It helped to the point where I had my regular nervousness because the good thing and one of my late dissertation chair, the same woman who asked if I was going to apply to the PhD, um, she told me, she said, "If you're ever going to something and you don't feel nervous, then you need to move on to something else."
Mm.
I would get nervous every time I had to teach, get nervous. So that was a good sign because that meant I was going to do everything within my power not to mess up. Right.
Mm.
So, yeah, that helped. So, having that opportunity then allowed me to really dive into understanding how to do a lesson plan for a class or for a unit of instruction, how to figure out in the middle of the semester or in the middle of a unit, how to switch it based on the feedback I'm getting from my students' completed assignments. I had to learn that, right?
Mhm.
I had to accept the fact that grading their essays, that was data that meant, okay, what can I do to help improve them for this next writing assignment? What can I do that allowed them to catch hold of what I've been trying to teach them before they had that first writing assignment? So
Mhm.
it allowed me to look at data. It allowed me to then really come to my senses and say, okay, who's the problem here? Is it really me or is it them? Okay, I may not know that. So what can I do to help the situation? So that meant, okay, let's go to the drawing board. That didn't work out. So maybe that means I need to back it up a little bit and not think so lofty. Now think more practical. So now I need to focus on mechanics. Now I need to focus on style. Now I need to focus on organization. Now I need to focus on, whatever that is. So that allowed me that teaching experience that allowed me to really love teaching because I loved it. The reason I loved it, it was it was the connections that I was able to make with the students.
Mhm.
It was a connection that I was able to make with them because I realized that I too used to be a freshman, that I too had to sit in the class, and that I too had to listen to somebody with a monotone voice for about
Mm.
50 minutes. And I refused to be that dude. So at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I tried to be engaging. I tried to captivate their attention every moment I can. So if I found
Mhm.
myself talking for about 10 minutes on a lesson, we switch it up. Group activity, boom. All right, now you come to the board. Show me what you have learned, because now it becomes a very organic experience when we have that collaborative learning taking place, when a person takes the time to show that he or she understands or not understands, because those are even moments where we can teach too, right? And there's
Mhm.
another moment where other people feel comfortable. So that graduate teaching assistantship was a blessing. It allowed
Mhm.
me to really love teaching. So yes.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, I was thinking like, wow, just being a GTA because I've had like maybe one or two like in my whole academic career,
Mhm.
and so just now thinking back, I'm like, oh, they were probably super nervous because I know I had one and he was just like,
Mhm.
it was
Yeah.
rough, and I just didn't think, oh, they're also in school themselves while they're doing this. So
Mhm.
there's probably all kinds of pressure coming from
Yes.
all sides. So
Yes.
really interesting. And being a reflective educator is really important. Um, being able to reflect on yourself, okay, like what, and I always say, always point the finger at myself. I always do that
Mhm.
because first of all, I'm the one with the knowledge here. So I'm just
Yes.
gonna have to go to myself first. And then even though I talk a good game, I always say, something's wrong with these kids. I'll say that at first, but I'm like, no, what did I do? Like, how could I have been
Mhm.
better?
Mhm.
Because if I'm better, it'll be easier. That's
Yes.
that's my mantra to myself. If
I
I
agree.
get better, it'll be easier.
I
If I'm
agree.
as much as if I can just get better at what I'm doing and how I'm teaching it, it'll eventually get easier for me
I agree.
because I want to as long as I want to become more of a facilitator than a teacher. Even at the middle school level, I need to kind of show them how to think versus what to think about.
Preach.
Um, and that's been my goal. So just learning from different educators and how to better do that,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
always my goal every year. So thanks for sharing that. So next,
Mhm.
let's go to your how you entered Stillman College and kind of your first years as being Dr. Golar in teaching.
Yeah, so let me back this up. First year, I got to tell this. I got to tell this story. I got to tell this story. So
Mhm.
here I am. It's commencement day. I'm about to get hooded. You know how that is. You're feeling good about yourself. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I got this doctorate. Yes, it's going down.
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. You're hyped, but I didn't have a job lined
Mhm.
up. I didn't have a job lined
Were
up.
you married yet, or had
Yes, I was married. My wife
mm,
and I got married 2007.
y'all hear that? The
Hmm.
man had no job. The man
Right?
had no job and got married. See,
Got married.
that's
Both
a,
of
that's a
us,
whole other
both
conversation.
both of us were in the graduate programs, right?
Uh-huh.
And the interesting story is, when she finished her master's, she went on to enter the same PhD program that I had entered. So we were
Wow.
both in the same PhD program at the same time. I graduated 2010. She graduated right behind me, 2011. So I say this. I put out job applications, I put out resumes and everything, but by the time I was graduating, I did not have a job, people. I didn't have an actual offer letter that said, hey, you're going to start here in the fall. I didn't have that.
Wow.
So rewind from that moment of getting hooded, rewind. I go back to November of that year. In November, I get invited by Stillman's administration to say, hey, we want you to present at the presidential colloquium. I'm like, whoa, that sounds fancy. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, snap. I'm hearing all these great stories about President Ernest McNeely, all these great stories about the Charlotte Carters and the Mary
Mhm.
Jane Crotzers, like before I really get to know them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, these
Mhm.
are people who are administrators and they want me to come present. So I'm talking to my dissertation chair and she's like, oh yeah, Norman, we can make this happen. She said, Norman, don't create a boring presentation. And she was so serious. She said, do not, this is what she did. And she got me hooked to it. She sent me YouTube videos of Steve Jobs.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am. And I said, what? This is just me talking. What? This cat is cool. He is walking this stage. He's just pressing a button and something come up in the back. He's not looking at the screen, reading words. No,
Mhm.
he's going about his business. So what did I do? I took that on.
Mhm.
I created a presentation that didn't allow me to look at the screen and read the words. I took the time to master that art because it was the presidential colloquium, and I wanted to make sure I did my dissertation chair proud. But
Right.
that was in November. I did that, had the opportunity to present. My guess is people enjoyed the conversation, and so the time of having like a reception after it. Of course, you can't really eat during receptions because everyone's asking you questions. So I'm just answering questions, so forth and so on.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I went through all of that process. Didn't hear anything else from Stillman. November was November. I didn't hear anything else from Stillman. So here I am getting hooded. Boom, I get hooded, celebrate, whoo-hoo. And Regina says, so what are we gonna do? She said, I'm still in graduate school and
Whew.
you don't have a job lined up. I said, I don't know. We see what happened. And it was like maybe two days or so after I got hooded, I go check the mail, and in the mail is a contract from Stillman.
Mm.
Now, mind you, I didn't hear from Stillman in November. November was the last time I had heard from Stillman.
Wow.
So
So this is like the following May, or
yes,
was it?
this,
Oh, wow.
yes, yes. This means we went through December all the way to May. Dead silence, dead cricket. I don't even. And the interesting thing is, before I got invited to do the presidential colloquium, I had put in my application per the instructions of the chair at the time, Dr. Ruby Perkins. She said, "Look, send your stuff to me. Send it in now because I'm leaving. I'm retiring. I need somebody in this place and all this other stuff." And I'm like, "Whoa,
Mhm.
hold on." But anyway, I did. But no, I didn't hear from Stillman. So of course, when I walked to the mail that day, a contract was in the mail. And I'm like excited. I'm excited. I'm like, thank you, Lord. I go back and talk to Regina. I said, hey, look at this. She said, well, what is that? I said, it's a contract. She said, she said, did you talk to somebody? I said, no, I didn't talk to you. She said, well, is it a number on there you can call because you need to get some understanding? Don't you have some questions? I said, yes, I got plenty of questions, right? So fast forward, here I am taking on this opportunity to serve as not as an assistant professor of English, but as the chair of the Department of English.
Mhm.
So fresh from graduate school,
Wow.
fresh from graduate school, and Dr. Mary Jane Crotzer, who was the dean at the time, she let me in on the conversation that she had with her boss, the provost at the time was Dr. Charlotte Carter. And she said, Dr. Charlotte Carter, right? Exactly. She said, Dr. Charlotte Carter said, are you out your beeping mind? What are you talking about? Bringing this young man in to serve as chair. And she told her, she said, but he hasn't been at Stillman, which means he can provide a fresh perspective to the leadership.
Wow.
So, so I had to,
Little Dean Croxter, like,
yes, I had to navigate that first year as a junior faculty, as a chair, right? So that's like, oh my goodness, now I am over a department. My first year, my wife can tell you, Still whipped my behind my first year.
I was wondering because if people out there don't know, his wife is an alum of Stillman College. So I can only imagine the conversations you all
Oh
have.
my goodness. She said you were like a zombie, man. You were like it was like you came home and it looked like they just tore you up. But that's what it was, right? It was a sense of
Mhm,
navigating that new level, that new terrain, that new opportunity, that new blessing. And I had to do it as a chair, not
mhm.
as an assistant professor, as a
Wow.
chair. And so that meant I taught classes and my load was very heavy, right? I
Mhm.
taught at the most during my time of serving as chair, I remember teaching 6 classes at one time.
Wow.
At the least, I remember teaching 3 classes. But
Mhm,
everything in between that on a consistent basis, it had been 5 classes while I served as chair. Um, Navigating that, I had to understand real quickly, really quickly. I had to understand people. I
mhm.
had to understand talents. And I had to understand I cannot manage people. I had to manage their talents. Okay, hear me
Yes,
clearly
yes.
because there's a difference. When you're managing people, you get irate, you get irritated, you get frustrated, or you get celebrate because you're focusing on that person. But if you look
Emotions.
at, yes, exactly. But if you look at the talents, okay, you can bypass that personality and say, hey, I think I need you to do this because this is going to be the area that helps strengthen this department. So I had to manage talents and not people. So yeah, I had to learn that very quickly. And the other thing is I had to learn the balance because here's the other thing. Once I got that job, and ladies, y'all understand this. You want to be with your husband, right? No problem. You want to have children with your husband when you know your husband has secured a job. So I would say this little nugget. My wife was like, you got a job? Hey, want to have a baby? Like,
Like, hold on.
because for her, it was like, okay, we are at a place where we can raise a family. We are at a place where we
Yeah.
have income, right?
Yeah. And it's an order. Like everything was kind of happening in a good order for
Mhm.
you too.
In a good
Yeah.
order, right? And she let me in on that little insight she had because she and I, we were just like, oh yeah, we're fine. It's just the two of us. We're good. Whatever, whatever. We're good. We're good. We're good. So of course, like I told you, we got married 2007. So we had 3 years to love on each other and know each other and not rush anything. And that was the blessing. And so then once the job came, once the security came, once the benefits came, it was like, hey, what do you think about expanding? Right. So that's what we
Mhm.
did. But yeah, navigating that was a task. So yeah. And then the other thing is what I also learned that first year, as you say, Dr. Golar,
Mhm.
um, I had to realize now I'm not just representing the University of Alabama as an alum or alumnus, I'm representing Stillman College. So what does that mean? That means if I go to Walmart, I cannot wear cutoff t-shirts and
Mhm.
shorts, right?
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with wearing shorts, but you can't be, it's too much you're exposing and you're teaching, right? And you
Yeah.
are a chair, right? And you are an employee of this institution, right? So I
Mhm.
had to navigate how was I going to be in my private life, but still in public, right? But still maintaining the integrity of maintaining that, hey, I am a person who has a job and I am not out here trying to, mess that up.
Mhm.
That was a major understanding as well because I do realize, hey, I am a person, they are people. I have to go grocery shopping, they are have to go grocery shopping. And so every time when I come in Walmart and I happen to see a group of my students, the first thing they say, Golar, what you doing in here?
Like I have to
I'm
eat.
like, what? I'm here to eat just like you are. I need bread. I need milk. Dr. Golar, you shop at Walmart? It was like this whole thing. I'm like, yes, I shop at Walmart. I gotta get my
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, it was just that reality. So navigating the professional life as well as navigating the life of integrity outside of those hours of working at the job. And then also, like I said, I had to understand people really quickly. And I had to
Mhm.
understand the policies that are required of a person who serves as a department chair. But yeah, those were some of the things that I had to navigate and understand.
So when you, as far as like being chair, like who poured into you? Like who did you go to even learn how to do what you were doing?
Who I poured into?
Yes, who did you go to? Like, hey, how do I do? Because I mean, as a chair, don't you have to deal with budgets and things like that yet? Or
Yeah, I do with budgets, have to do with scheduling, have to do with hiring in terms of if there's a vacancy among my department, I have to do all of those things.
yeah,
So
so how do you learn how to do that? Like while like because it's like
yeah,
you're building the plane while you're flying it too.
absolutely. So you had Dr. Mary Jane Crotcher, who was a great teacher. She was a great mentor. She was a person who took the time to answer my calls, who took the time to have me come visit her if ever I had a question. And she let me know ahead of time. She said, look, I know this is new for you. My door is always open. I'm here. I also served as a department chair, so I know a few things. I'm also a dean, so I know some more things, so forth and so on.
Mhm.
So when I had that opportunity, I seized it. The other
Yeah.
thing, and I'm going to be real with you, the other thing that I did, and my wife was very well aware of it. I I was praying. I was praying to God, asking God to lead me, help me to understand new territory because there are some things going to come up that I had no idea. And lo and behold, this is my testimony. I'm going to stick to it. If I had a question that I just asked God about the night before or the week before, I was just so happen, and it's gone from my mind at the time when I'm in the present, and I just happened to go into the faculty lounge, and there was an answer to a question that I
Mm.
asked God prior to that day. And that answer was as simple as a random piece of paper to me was a very perfectly positioned paper for God, right? Because it
Mm.
had information. I said, lo and behold, get out of Dodge.
Wow.
Right. So I had the mentorship taking place with Dr.
Mhm.
Crotzer, and I had God guiding me because there were a lot of things that I just didn't understand. And I had
Mhm.
to understand that I didn't understand, but I was not going to just allow myself to not learn. I
Mhm.
had to take the time to listen to what Dr. Crotcher was saying, and I had to take the time to listen to God when he was talking in ways that I didn't even expect. Oh my goodness. So
Mhm.
yeah, God and I walked that first year. God and I walked that process of being a chair. And then, of course, once I, gained about, 3, 4 years of experience, some of this thing was just like clockwork. It was like, oh, yeah, we've been down this one before. Okay, we know what to do with
Mhm.
this one. We know how to do with this one. And then lo and behold, because Stillman being so small, I had opportunities where I started working with other units and with other offices. So more information started fueling. So more information started coming to me.
Mhm.
And that helped in that process of serving as a department chair.
Okay, so if let's just say I am a professor
Mhm,
at a college,
mhm.
what are some signs that I need to look for in myself that would let me know that I would make a good administrator, whether it's a chair or a dean? Like, what are some things that tell you right off, like, okay, your best ministry is strictly teaching, or you have a ministry where you can do a little bit of everything?
Hmm. I would say the thing that you may be able to recognize is if you find yourself being helpful to individuals who are not within your department. That's
Mhm.
the first thing.
Okay.
Another thing is if you find yourself being comfortable enough where you can learn something and then share that something with someone else who's also learning, right? The other thing is, do you have patience? Are you a patient individual when an issue comes to your lap, right? Are you the type of person who just flies off the handle, or are you the type of person that says, let's think about this some more?
Mhm.
Because really, it's not like it's a black and white thing. It's more so what feels comfortable to you and what you're able to do. I have individuals with whom I worked at Stillman, and when I tell you they have administration written all over every fiber of their walk, every fiber of their talk, every fiber of their thoughts, but they do not want to accept it, and that's fine. And it's me on the outside looking in, and maybe they haven't found that comfort level the way I see that comfort being displayed and performed. And so sometimes it just takes a person outside of you to come and say, hey, you ever thought about, right?
Mm,
Hey,
mhm,
right? Because, if you are not owning up to what you recognize within yourself, many times it takes someone on the outside to bring that to your attention. So I would say, yeah, think about those things that kind of help you to realize, because being in leadership, people say, oh, it's a great title to have. But one of the things that I have always understood, leadership requires more service,
mm,
right? When you
yeah.
are a leader means you are serving. You're
Mm,
serving a greater population than yourself. So some people get it twisted. Some of them say, oh, well, I'm so and so. I don't have to do that. No,
mm.
that's not how that needs to go.
More so, you would have to do. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's what I would say. And then the other thing is, outside of being patient, but the other thing is, are you a person who's well organized?
Mm-hmm.
because managing a department, managing a school, managing a division, managing a unit, that requires keeping up with many things at one time. So how are you going to manage that? Oh, let me start putting things in files and let me start organizing these things. So then if someone needs these things in the future, I know exactly where to go. Boom. I don't have to be like, okay, let me think where I last saw that, right? Because you know how some of our desks are like, hey, I know the order of my chaos, people. Don't come in moving stuff, right?
Right.
But there's another level of organization outside of you knowing, internalize that chaos. But let's say if you were to lead that position, will somebody be able to come right in and understand where you left off, right?
Mm-hmm.
But think about those things if it's a sense of that's what you want. And then the other thing is that what you want? You have to ask yourself that. Is that the purpose that you have that's driving you? Is that what you want? So sometimes some of us look at it in terms of, hey, something's wrong here. I need to do something. And that
Mm-hmm.
something is, let me throw my hat in the ring so that way I can be considered for this higher up position because I have some ideas that are being ignored and I have some ideas that I think that have really helped this department. But yeah, I would say those things. I know it's a lot that I said, but
Yeah.
yeah, if you could pick and choose any one of those that pretty much work for you.
No, that's helpful. Okay, so now I want to switch gears
Mhm.
because, especially as a reading and writing teacher, I just need to kind of pick your brain
Okay.
because sometimes I just feel like, is this a hopeless act to what is going on with this with this curriculum that I need to teach?
Mhm.
Okay, so I want to know. Well, let's start off by, I want you to kind of talk about how you've changed your teaching practices and like your methods to keep up with technology and learning styles.
The how is in me taking the time to seize opportunities that would help increase my skill set. For example, um, I was one of few faculty members who took on the task of being credentialed through AQ, the Association of College and University Educators.
Mhm.
And what that meant was that was me going through assignments, submitting assignments, watching videos, doing weekly discussion posts. I mean, it was just like crazy. That thing lasts for about, I think, 2 semesters. And all
Mhm.
this was going on while I was chair. But anyway, I took on that task. And when I took on that task, it allowed me to navigate my classroom in other areas that I had not thought of. Right.
Okay.
So you talk about how can I change or what caused me to change. The how is in seizing those opportunities that come that will allow you to build on your skill set. So what
Mhm.
I found out was there was this major shift in educating our scholars to say, okay, they want to know how is this relevant.
Mm.
You had that push going on. They want to know how is this relevant. So then they say, hey, start providing accountability in the classroom where they feel like they are part of the curriculum as opposed to being fed the curriculum only, right? So
Okay.
when we talk about, even though we create our syllabi, because it was always me creating the syllabi and then just going through the syllabi, but since that AQ credentialing course, it was like, okay, create the syllabi, but now talk to them about establishing rules, right? Because you want to make sure that you are holding them accountable for the curriculum that we are all taking in together. So when you talk about that bit about no one really doing their assignments, no one really doing the reading, so forth and so on, we
Mhm.
have that conversation in the opening gambit of the semester. And we say, all right, we have read the syllabus. Let us come up with rules that all of us will feel comfortable about.
Mhm.
And they're all like, oh, yeah, you can't be late 10 minutes. And, they're hyped about it. You're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So you feed into their energy. They're like, oh, if I miss an assignment, I get one grace. And And I say, class, do you all agree with it? If it was a general consensus, we did it. If it was like a split, I say, hey, we need to revise it. That kind of a deal because they felt invested. They felt important. They felt like, hey, this matters. So that allowed me to change it in that aspect to understand the policy part. The policy
Mhm.
part that will lead to you getting the results that you need because you want the students to do the work. So now they're holding themselves accountable by those rules that
Mhm.
they created, not that I created, but
It's the
they.
buy-in. Yeah.
Yes, it's the buy-in, exactly.
Mhm.
The other thing is I love technology.
Mhm.
So that part is not difficult for me to embrace. So if I see if I see something that's going on, I'm like, hey, I want to know how to do that, right? Because there
Mhm.
was this thing about using Padlet. I was like, that's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
cool. Yeah, I can do Padlet. Yeah. So we started implementing that. Then it's like, oh, what about not just Padlet, but what about other things like creating Jeopardy assignments online? I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah. I remember finding a thing online where we would go
Mhm.
through the different English terms and terminologies. I mean, and syntaxes and sentence
Mhm.
frameworks and everything like that. So I would create this Jeopardy game. And we'd do, hey, we're gonna split you up in two groups, right? So had the whole thing. Hey, can I have that? Uh, what's that sound for 800? I mean, we had all that good stuff. The other thing that I found out was Ed Puzzle, right? It's like, oh yeah, Ed Puzzle. Yeah, we can actually have recordings, and then we can actually have questions in the middle
Yeah.
of the video, which cause them to really think on what they just heard. So now you got that. I told you I'm
Okay.
in technology, so
We
yeah.
use that. Okay, I like
Mhm. Right.
that.
So, and then the other one I loved when it came to brainstorming. I love Coggle It. Coggle It was very collaborative. So it's almost like a big old wiki page, um,
Okay.
and you take the time to share with everyone in your class. So then, for instance, when we were taking the time in English Composition 2 to talk about the common literary elements in a given, in a given series of short stories, we were then able to plot these ideas. So let's say in the middle we got Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin. All right, let's talk about characterization. So we create a little stem and a little bubble of characterization, and then we start building on that characterization. Who's the narrator? Who's the antagonist? Who's flat character? Who's so forth and so on. Do we have dynamic characters? Do we do So it's just going on and on. And at the end of the day, you have like this very like you see this artwork hanging up behind me. It's
Mhm.
almost like that, just stems of bubbles, and they
Mhm.
all contribute to it. So then, of course, when we're done in the classroom, I say, all right, now what I want you to do is what we have done in the classroom, I want you to take this and apply it to the story Two Kinds by Amy Tan. And then it's a sense of you now making the connections. Do you see any similarities between Sonny's Blues and Two Kind, right? So then you start diagramming those, brainstorming those. So that was pretty cool and organic because they saw that it was live. So whenever they typed something, it appeared, and we got to see how expansive this thing got. So they don't understand. So they able to understand. Hey, we make connections. We don't just leave things over here. We make connections. So the connections allow us to think outside of the classroom and how it's relevant to our pursuit of a career thereafter. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so now with that being said, the next few questions, I want them to kind of be geared toward secondary level teachers. So, especially those ELA teachers,
Mhm.
and because I want to make sure that my students are best prepared for college and career.
Okay.
But we'll just focus on the ones that we know want to go to college,
Mhm.
or any type of post secondary work. Let's kind of These questions are going to be kind of geared towards those teachers and maybe even parents of students that may homeschool their children
Okay.
at the secondary level. So one is, what can we do to better prepare students, or our students or our children, for that collegiate level writing and reading?
Mhm. What can you do?
And what have you seen that you said, "Ooh, they should have probably worked on this a little more in high school or in middle school," like those
Okay.
skills, you
Okay.
know?
I know it sounds like straight cliche, but hone in thesis statements. What is a thesis statement?
Okay.
Right now, at Stillman, I can't speak. Well, even at UA, there are some moments when I had that when I was a graduate student where they didn't understand thesis statements. Thesis statements. Help them to understand what thesis statements are. Help
Mhm,
them to understand a thesis statement is not an entire paragraph. Help them to
mhm,
understand a thesis statement is not a question. They said statement, not thesis question. Help them to
right.
understand that. Help them to understand how you build the thesis thereafter, right? Those
Mhm,
subsequent paragraphs are very important. Help them to understand topic sentences. Hey, my topic sentence for my first supporting paragraph is coming from my first point addressed in my thesis statement,
wow.
right? Um, Take the time to also talk to them and let them know. And I may get in trouble for this one because I know it's a lot of educators out there like, man, this dude is crazy. Um, Stop being so prescriptive. Here's what I mean.
Okay.
Y'all can't use can't and don't. Y'all can't use contractions, right?
Mm.
Stop
Can't
telling
don't start a sentence with because.
stop telling them that. And the
Okay.
reason I say that is because some of us are afraid to teach things that we ourselves are not as knowledgeable about. And I get it. That's understandable. So for instance, the reason why someone said do not start a sentence with because, the reason is they came across students used to having verbal conversations. So when those verbal conversations get transcribed onto the page, what does the student do? Because I was hungry, period. Right? As
Mm-hmm.
in, hey, why did you eat that sandwich? Because I was hungry, period. Right? So don't be prescriptive, be descriptive. Here's what I mean. If you see something that doesn't fall along the lines of conventional communication that is on the page, notice I'm saying my words carefully. I'm not saying correct English. I'm not saying, listen to me carefully. If you see that a student has performed something that is not at the conventional level of writing on the page, take the time to show that student how that can be used. Don't just dismiss it. Don't just say don't use it. Show them how they can use it, because the English language is so expansive, they can use it. We just got to take the time to teach them. And I get it. You have a curriculum that you must follow in a secondary school system. I get it. But we have to try to find something to get that moment where we can pour in that opportunity to expand, because we're so busy taking away that we forget that expansion is what helps college students thrive. They don't thrive because you have taken away, they thrive because you have expanded their mind. So expand
Mm-hmm.
their mind. That's what I would say. That's just a small thing. This is a small thing. And because we see a lot of that going on in our college students today, some of them are not reading as well as we want them to. So take the time to understand, to walk through phonics. Hey, when you place these two words together, it makes this sound. It doesn't say that sound. When you take the time to, and then allow them to not just get away with, when they're reading, you ever heard this? When they're reading, they don't know the word and they skip it. Or
Yeah.
or they're reading, they don't know the word, they look to you to say it, you say it, and they don't repeat it, and they keep going. Don't allow them to do that. Allow them to own up with, hey, because we know that word yacht, yacht, we don't see that on a lot. We don't see that a lot. So if we see that word and they're thinking like yacht or whatever that is, take the time to teach them, hey, that's yacht, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
now when they see it again, they don't got to let everybody know they didn't know it the first time, but when they see it again, they're going to, oh, yachts. My father bought a yacht, right? So yeah, things
Right.
like that. I mean, the small things. I have seniors who have uh, who have graduated, and they have graduated with a sense of, others found that their performance of reading was not at the level that they had want a senior to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out that the progression that the student made from a freshman and a senior, and what that student was able to do over those course of 4 years, I'm proud of it, even though it's still not at the level that we want. So that's why I say we have to be descriptive. We can't just always be prescriptive, because prescription means you are eliminating possibilities beyond their understanding. So allow them to embrace some of the things and expand what it is
I,
they.
I love that. It can be frustrating just coming from a teacher, and it really shows that we need reform on different levels, because it's like, this three-legged stool, so we can't just work in one area. But when it comes to, when you talked about phonics, I see that myself. So I remember my first time here, and that's when I found out that phonics had kind of been phased out in a lot of places.
Mhm.
Blew my mind, because the whole language, oh, if the once they know these words, they don't need to know the font. Mm-mm. Because I realized I had students that would come to hard words, and or words that they had not recognized, and um I just, "Hey, what's this word? Oh, just sound it out." They look at me like a deer in headlights. What do you mean sound it out?
Mhm.
And I'm looking at them like, like the song, he looked at me and I looked at him. And I'm
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? What do you mean
Yeah.
sound it out?
Yeah.
And I had to ask a teacher, hey, I've had way too many students that do, and I had to ask my, what they call my highest student, like, do you know how to sound? Like, I don't know what you mean sound it out. Okay, you look at the word, and you, whatever sound that, this consonant and this vowel, if they blend together, the how do you dissect this?
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. And I had a teacher tell me, oh, well, they kind of phased it out. They're just now bringing it back. They're now bringing it back. So it's going to take a decade almost before I see these children, um,
Absolutely.
which is sad. Sometimes I hate how, like, in K-12, we don't struggle long enough in certain things. Like, we don't test it long enough. It's like, if
Mhm.
it doesn't work these first 2 years, throw it out. Like, well, let's be
Mhm.
reflective and think, maybe, okay, do we need to approach it differently,
Yeah.
so, but as far as how you are talking about the thesis statement, that is something, like I said earlier, I don't, I need 3 points, because that was drilled into me. I don't
Mhm.
know, with
Mhm.
Mr. McBride in Central High School. I need 3 points.
Mhm.
He was like, Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
Give me
Yes.
3 points in your thesis.
Yes.
First point needs to be what your first body paragraph is about.
Mhm.
Second point, second body paragraph. Third
Mhm.
point, third body paragraph.
Yeah.
And so once you know that structure, and um I taught fifth grade 1 year, and I was really trying to teach them. I was very prescriptive at that point, because I needed them to know a foundation.
Mhm.
Because in my head, okay, once I'm a middle, because I'm naturally a middle school level
Mhm.
teacher.
Mhm.
So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I need them to know this basis. I need them to know this foundation of
Mhm.
how a paper should be structured. They need to know the
Yeah.
structure. And
Absolutely.
once they get to middle school, that's when I start teaching them style, because I just need you to start blurting out whatever's in your brain on the paper. And then we could work on, okay, maybe this sentence works better.
Yeah.
Maybe this, oh, I see you right. Kind of like, that's what I expect to do as a middle level
Yeah.
teacher. But then I'm getting more and more students that don't know the
Mhm.
structure piece,
Yeah.
like you said.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm really going to be working on this year. I'm working on my units as we speak. Like, I already have my stuff pulled up, and really working on that when we get to that informational
Yes.
unit, because I need y'all to know this structure. I need it to be like muscle memory,
Mhm.
because it's easier for me to teach you style. And I explain that to them. I think teachers need to do that more, be vulnerable and say, hey, this is really why I'm doing this. It's going to make it easier for you down the road. I just need you to know this structure.
Mhm.
Once you know it, get that muscle memory down. Okay,
Mhm.
now let's talk about the style. Just say
Mhm.
whatever's on your mind, because a lot of times they're apprehensive about putting their thoughts on paper.
Yes.
And I tell them, like, hey, just what do you think about you? You're always talking. You're getting in trouble for talking all day. You got opinions, you got thoughts about things, but I just want you to say it on paper. And it's almost like they don't think they sound smart enough. And I said, no, just write it. I'm really the only person that's going to read
Mhm.
it most of the
Mhm.
time. So,
Yes.
and I know you're in seventh grade. So just
Yes.
write it, just get it on the paper, and we can work with it. But if you don't get anything on that paper, I have nothing to work with. And
What?
it's really hard for me to teach you with
Absolutely.
with a just a blank slate, because I need to kind of see what you already have. So
Absolutely.
I love
Mhm.
that, even at the collegiate level, that's something that, as secondary teachers could work on, just making sure that they have that strong sense of, how to write a thesis statement, that structure that's needed. Because if I'm struggling with structure, and I've seen it, because
Mhm.
I've taught some high school summer school courses in high school, and I'm looking at the sentence structure, and I say, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
like, dang, we need to work on this. And it can be really frustrating as a teacher sometimes, because you're fighting that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Time is not on our side. And it's like, man, I just don't have the time that I want. It's
Right.
not that I don't want to do it. And a lot of teachers are like that. It's not that we don't want to do it, but we already see, like, man, how am I? This is a slippery slope, because if
Mhm.
I do, like, it's a snowball effect. If they don't get that structure down, it becomes so much more difficult down the
Absolutely.
road.
Absolutely.
And being able to be descriptive. I'm like, you're so descriptive when you're talking to your friends. I want you to think like that when you're writing.
Yeah.
And if you can just give me description, okay, that's good.
Of
That's good.
course.
And
Yeah.
I had a great conversation with an art teacher. It was my son's art teacher back in, he was in elementary school.
Mhm.
And she told me, she says, he's so good. He's so good. And of course, as a parent, that makes you feel good. But one day I said, okay, in your opinion, what makes a student good in art? Like, how can you, like, when you see their artwork at the elementary, at third grade, what makes you feel like, hey, they could really go far in this? And she said it's how much detail he puts into his artwork.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I said, okay. And so I started to translate that into how I would teach writing. Okay, if you give me more, the students that gave a lot of detail,
Hmm.
whether it was correct structure, whether it the words were spelled correctly, they gave. I knew what they like. I knew what you like. My grandma. I know what you're getting at. So
Hmm.
I know what you're getting at. Okay, I can work with this.
Yes.
Okay, I can work with this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's got some poor spelling, but we
Yeah.
can work on spelling.
Yes.
We've got Grammarly now. And
Yes.
it's like that should be no excuse. We've got that. So
Well,
that I really appreciate that advice to a
oh
secondary
yeah,
teachers
not a
on getting
problem.
that structure.
And reading also is reading is an important thing to add in there, making sure that they read, because
Mhm.
how else are we to emulate the language if we're not reading enough of the language?
Yes.
So
Yes, that's how you learn vocabulary. That's how
yeah.
you learn style a lot of times. Like sometimes I don't know how to write dialogue where the dialogue may be an entire page.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
how do I even structure the sentences?
Yeah.
How should that look? Well, if you're not reading enough, you're not going to have enough to go off of. You don't have that foundation to say, "Okay, I've seen this before somewhere and I can probably pick up a book."
Hmm.
Um
Yeah.
and we've talked about that. I don't know if it was you and I that had that conversation about one of the hardest units to teach in secondary is drama and poetry. And and what I've learned over the years is that really the um, students that struggle the most in poetry
Mhm.
and just writing poetry are the ones that struggle the most in mechanics, and because they don't if you don't really know the rules and feel comfortable with the conventions of English writing, then you don't really know how to break them, because that's all poetry is doing. You're breaking these rules and creating art with your
Mhm.
writing.
Yes.
um so
Breaking.
I tell them, like, like, okay, I need you to know this. Yes, this first week in school, we are diagramming sentences. I don't care who comes to my classroom and does an observation, and this is low level on Bloom's, but we need this. We need this structure,
Yes.
because if they don't know how to structure a sentence, if I tell them, hey, I need you to write a sentence where all of my adjectives look like this or on this side of the sentence. Well, they're like, okay, how do I even do that? Because if you don't know how to do it correctly, you don't know how to twist it. You don't know how to, make it more pliable for you. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
just really interesting, what students struggle with at the collegiate level.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some things that maybe a high school teacher can do to kind of help foster a love for it? Because I'm sure maybe you grew up with, even though you had a love for writing when you were going through grade school, you may have had, maybe some of your peers didn't like it as much, but may have changed their tune sometime down the road. What
Mhm.
are some ways that a high school teacher can kind of um, help a student be like to write or read more?
Oh. Hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you use the resource that they find entertaining. So
Hmm.
we can take it. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I think I'm pretty right about this one. Everyone loves music,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So start asking them who are some of their favorite artists.
Hmm.
Now, they may use some of the current, the more modern artists today, but what you can do is think about that genre, and then in your own regard, think about a lyricist or a poet or whomever who wrote songs that's
Hmm.
contributing to that genre, and share that with the student, right? So that's the first
Hmm.
thing, giving them a sense of understanding that not all writing is dry, not all writing is jejune. Writing can be fun. Writing can be creative. Writing can be lively. So show them examples of what that song looks like on the page. That's
Mhm.
one thing, because then you start getting them interested to reading the words as opposed to just hearing the words, right?
Mhm.
How many times, and I saw on Facebook not too long ago, and I think it was Kilo Starworth who said, how long did I get this wrong? Where they thought it was a bomb in Gilead, BOMB, as opposed to
Oh,
a
a
bomb.
bomb.
Yes. So when you talk about placing it on the page, it's like, what? And so now you start asking, what is a bomb? Like, I thought they were saying bomb, right? So yeah, just play around with that, you know. And then the idea of writing. Right now, when we think about writing, I use this analogy in the creative writing classes where it says, creative writing is to English as blank is to blank. And I have the students figure
Mhm.
out what they want to put in the blank is to blank. And so
Mhm.
once they complete it, we have that conversation and say, okay, what is the relationship that you're trying to convey here, right? So
Mhm.
when many of them say, hey, English is what we do, creative writing is what makes it better, right? So some people say
Mhm.
things like that.
Mhm.
So in terms of getting students excited about writing, have them write things that um, allow them to kind of expand their imagination a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, because once you, like you said, once you get something on the page, you can then begin to help them understand, hey, here's something you can improve on. Let's consider trying this. But outside of that, those are the things that come to mind.
Mhm.
Haven't had much, many conversations about that part, but
Mhm.
those are the things that come to mind when you ask that question.
Yes, but you actually have a good point in that. There are some. I can just think of different lessons that I kind of where I use as what I call kind of a guinea pig,
Mhm.
just to see. Like, okay, like let me just try this out. A couple that I had were one that really helped in their argumentative writing was it's called the murder trial of SpongeBob SquarePants.
What?
Yes, you might want to try this because it can get deep.
Really?
So basically, I what I do is, of course, we this is kind of like I almost use it as an assessment, like a
Mhm.
project. It's like a project based assessment that I use at the end, towards the end of the unit. So what there's a trailer online, you can find it. I usually it's attached in my lesson plan for it, but it's a quick like 2-minute video, but it's
Mhm.
basically a news story of Mr. Krabs being found dead in the Krusty Krab. And so there's a list of there's like a list of what was found at the crime scene. They have their suspects, and it's all like so each group gets the same list of everything that was found, all the evidence, everything. However, you had to either be on the prosecution team
Mhm.
or you were on the defense team. Okay. So, and we talk about, reasonable doubt. And basically, I randomly choose who's going to be on because they're going to make a decision when they see that trailer, when they see the breaking news story. This is who did it, or this is who did it. So when I randomly choose and I put them on a team, and I usually would call like an administrator to come in and be like at least the like a judge or a juror or a juror. They love it, and it's and the the defense, and a lot of times you'll hear the defense team. Well, we don't have enough. If they already have it made up in their mind
Mhm.
who was guilty of the crime, it would be harder for them. I'm like, no, you got to work harder. I need you to look at it from the other angle. And
Mhm.
it's such an engaging lesson. It
Yeah.
lasts about 3 days because we have to, build it up, and then the actual trial might take a class period or two, or depending on how long. But it's such a good lesson, and I can't take credit for creating it. I found it online and I've tweaked
Kudos,
it.
kudos. Yeah.
It's really good. I found it online several years ago, and I thought like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And if and seventh graders, you're talking about murder, and they love murder mysteries and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So they love that kind
Mhm.
of stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, just hearing, and then like and we would watch clips of Law and Order. Like, of course, they were school appropriate. And then they would come in. I'm like, y'all got to wear suits. You got to dress up when it's time for trial. And they would just take on a whole new personality. And I
Love it.
love every
Love
single
it.
year. I love watching them
I love it.
transform. And it's always it's in the second semester when we go over like argumentative writing.
Okay.
So they've already matured a little bit in the class, and we've gotten comfortable with each other. So I love them, taking little digs at each other. I mean, we have a really good time, and I get serious.
Good.
Just I put on my robe when I'm the judge. I put on my robe and everything, and have my gavel, and I'm up there like, like
That is
I
awesome.
love it.
It's
And
funny.
students, like teachers that might have, it's really good if you have multiple levels in the classroom, because I had some students that may have had other struggles like academically, or had other, like, maybe some disabilities, and so they were good jurors, so they still had a good time. I had a bailiff. You
You
can
had a whole
tweak it.
roster.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I wish I could have filmed it. I'm gonna ask this year. I'm gonna ask my principal
That's
if I can find a way
funny.
to film it and get the parents' permission, because it's such a fun lesson. And now I'm in the middle of creating another one that has to deal with the Kendrick versus Drake rap beef, and
Mm.
who won, and having to pull factual evidence of, okay, who's better, how do you so I'm really excited about that lesson that I'm creating now. But
That's awesome.
um yes, so okay, so as we're wrapping up our conversation, I want to get your hopes on the future of higher ed, particularly in the field of English and composition. And how you're like, people that are wanting to go into this field, of course, you talked about earlier, how can this be lucrative for you, how can you find your path, can you kind of talk about just maybe the future in your profession?
Interesting.
Mhm.
That's a tough question to answer. The the because it's hinged on a population of learners who we are still trying to mold, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And so right now, a lot of individuals, not everyone, but a lot of individuals are looking for shortcuts when it
Hmm.
comes to producing, creating work, right? IA generated documents.
Hmm.
People are finding that as, hey, quick fix to many things. But
Hmm.
um, I guess for the most part, one thing will be true. Here's one thing will be true. We are going to forever need an educator who comes from English composition background. We're going to forever need that person. Here's the
Hmm.
reason why. Academic writing and creative writing are two different streams of writing. They're two different, right?
Hmm.
Um, and because we're dealing with a population of individuals who are not looking to English as a field, we have to make sure that what we teach becomes applicable to that area where those individuals are looking to pursue.
Hmm.
So when I think about, um, of course, technical writing is a course, or technical communication is a course that many students at Stillman who are business majors, they take.
Hmm.
And we have to understand that they are looking at this as a global sense of communicating. So for those of us who come from English composition backgrounds, we have to make sure that we make it relevant to careers outside of English, because not so many individuals are choosing this route when it comes to uh, instant gratification, when it comes to um, pride in saying what career you have assumed, pride of saying what degree you have earned, right?
Hmm.
Now there still is a booming culture in writing that people are embracing.
Hmm.
And when I think about just the hopes of English composition, it will still be relevant for the sake of individuals who love language, for the sake of them realizing, okay, I'm going to have composition as my terminal degree in PhD, but I'm going to learn something else before I get there, right? And that
Mhm.
something else could be, whatever it is. It could be literature, it could be creative writing, it
Mm.
could be mathematics, who knows, right? But I want that PhD in composition and rhetoric because we find them useful in law, we find them useful uh,
Mm.
in contracting, we find them useful in business, we find them useful in English, we find them useful in education, we find them useful, we find them useful, we find them useful.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of being patient with the process because there's always a wave of when individuals catch hold to a trend, right? Because that
Yeah.
trend is like, hey, for whatever reason, everybody is on the Drake train. I'm done with that. Oh, for whatever reason, someone's on the Kendrick Lamar train. Okay, done with that. Oh,
Mhm.
some people on the Nas train died out, right? Oh,
Mhm.
I still hear Jay-Z ringing, people on that. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's just the same thing with our different content areas, our different graduate programs.
Mhm.
There are going to be waves where there aren't as many individuals applying for that program, but then a new surge will come where they're attracted to it. Um,
Mhm.
but I think it'll be relevant overall. I think it'll be needed. It's just a matter of being patient with that process. I mean, we're having larger conversations now, not just with subjects, but larger conversations about whether or not liberal arts education even matters today, right?
Mm.
We're having those conversations on whether or not a student should go into a trade school or pick up a trade or, get an associate and be done and go into this particular career. We're having those conversations because at the end of the day, individuals are trying to be entrepreneurs
Mhm.
the quick way.
Mm.
The quick way, right? So everybody wants to, create a pop-up shop. Everybody got their own content on TikTok. Everybody want to be, this, want to be that, because they
Mhm.
realize that there's a quicker investment on their return than if they go through 4 years of education, another 4 years, or another 2 years of a master, another 4 years of a PhD. They find it a little bit more, like, hey, that's too much of my time, right? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, we're having those conversations. So yet alone dealing with a subject area, yeah, we just kind of got to get in where we fit in and say, okay, well,
Mhm.
if it doesn't pour out much, progress on this end, we know it's going to pick up sometime later. And it takes us, Mrs. Hill, it takes us to be the ones to pour into those who are coming along to say, hey, this is what I did. Maybe you should try it too. Because
Mhm.
remember, think about it like this. Individuals who do not know Jesus is not because not all the time that they have denied him, is because no one has taken the time to teach
Told them.
them. Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, think about it like that. But yeah.
Amen. Well, I really appreciate the time you've taken with us, and
Yeah.
I can just what I've gathered the most is trust the process.
Mhm.
You can't rush through. You really can't rush through anything.
No, you
And
can't.
it's because before you know it, it's going to be over with anyway. So
Mhm.
why try to rush it? And I really appreciate those nuggets that you've given for us secondary teachers that will help, and even some of the knowledge that you've shared about your journey through graduate school and into admin at Stillman College. So I really appreciate that. Did
Yes.
you have anything additional that you want to tell our viewers?
Trust your journey.
Hmm. Love it. Trust
Trust
the
your journey.
journey.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, this is Pearls of Pedagogy, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Dr. Golar.
Thank you.
Bye bye.